Welcome back to Dat Dong Radio, listeners. Tonight on our late-night storytelling program, we have Kyo Chin with us again. Though a relatively new voice this year, her work has already captivated many of you. We're even creating a dedicated playlist for her stories, so be sure to check it out on the channel. Tonight, Kyo Chin returns with a short story titled, Playing Hui with Ghosts. We hope you enjoy it. Music. The morning was just beginning to break. A thin mist lingered over the river, snaking its way into the old rainwater basin tucked away in the backyard. Two small figures were bent over it, noisily gargling water. Tai, barely 8, wore a white school shirt speckled with mildew stains. He spat a mouthful of water onto the dirt yard and turned to breathe on Teo, his 10-year-old sister, eagerly asking, "Hey, does my breath still stink?" Teo wrinkled her small face, recoiling in disgust. She turned towards the house, calling out in her clear, sharp voice, "Mom, we need toothpaste. Taya's breath is awful. I can't stand it." Tom, the children's mother, emerged from the smoky kitchen. She held a jar of coarse salt, scooped a spoonful into the basin of rainwater, stirred it until dissolved, and handed it to the children. "Here, how many times have I told you to add salt to the water before gargling? Toothpaste is just a waste. It burns your tongue. Back in my day, your father and I never even used it, and our breath was still fresh." Teo pouted, taking the basin of salt water from her mother. She mumbled under her breath, "Your breath stinks too, Mom. It's not fresh at all." "I heard that." Tom shot her a sideways glance, making Teo shrink back. Then, softening her voice, she gestured towards the house. "Now, hurry up and wash your faces. Go light incense for your father. Then come eat breakfast." Obeying their mother, the two children quietly went into the main room. The most prominent feature was a small wooden altar, upon which sat an old photo of their father. A flickering oil lamp burned perpetually before it. Teo, familiar with the routine, quickly lit a stick of incense from the oil lamp and carefully placed it in the bronze incense burner. Wisps of white smoke curled upwards, carrying the faint scent of sandalwood. Tai, standing beside her, imitated his sister, pressing his small hands together and offering a few quick bows to the image of the father he barely remembered. Taking advantage of the early morning light, the two siblings scurried into the kitchen. Breakfast consisted of cold rice left over from the night before. Tom added a few tiny dried fish, each no bigger than her little finger, to each bowl and urged them, "Eat quickly, you'll be late." Once they were finished, Tom handed each of them school bags made from repurposed fertilizer sacks, washed clean. Tai saw the bag and immediately protested, pouting, "I don't want this. I want a superhero backpack like Bao's." Teo, being older, understood the family's poverty and the impossibility of such extravagance. She took the bag from her mother's hand, coaxing gently, "Just use this for now. Hurry up or you'll be late and the teacher will punish you." She pulled Tai along, running down the narrow dirt path. The shadows of the two small figures stretched behind them, disappearing behind the row of squash trellises at the end of the road. The thatched house fell silent once more. Tom returned inside, walking to the small altar. She lit a fresh incense stick and placed it in the burner, still warm from the children's offering. Her calloused finger gently traced the glass surface of the photo, caressing the sun-weathered, kind face of her deceased husband. A deep sadness clouded her eyes. She stood there for a long time, muttering something indistinct, as if telling him about the children's mourning and her daily worries. After about 10 minutes, Tom turned away, quietly picking up a bamboo basket filled with fishing nets and moving to the lean-to by the river, her dedicated workspace for mending nets for the villagers. Seated on a worn wooden stool, Tom's calloused hands swiftly threaded each stitch, repairing the torn holes in the long nets. As she worked, she softly sang folk songs to stave off the loneliness. Each time she finished mending a net, she carefully tied it up and placed it neatly in the bamboo basket beside her, waiting for the cool of the afternoon to paddle her small boat to deliver them, earning a few meager coins to buy rice, fish sauce, and other essentials for her family. Years ago, when her husband was alive, life wasn't so hard. But then disaster struck unexpectedly. Her husband's cargo boat, headed to the provincial market, was caught in a sudden storm late one night. The boat and its cargo sank, and he was lost to the swift currents. Her husband's untimely death left Tom with 2 young children and a mountain of debt borrowed to start the business. From that day on, the burden fell entirely on her slender shoulders. Tom had to tighten her belt, stretch every meal, and meticulously save every penny. She couldn't even dream of delicacies or luxuries. The same clothes she had since Teo was in her womb were still the ones she wore, living frugally out of habit. Everyone in the village knew of her nature. They pitied her circumstances. Eventually, few remembered her real name, Tom. Instead, they gave her a new name, both affectionate and pitiful, Kiet, Thrift. By the time she finished mending the nets, the midday sun was directly overhead. Tom guessed the children would soon be home from school. She carefully put away her tools, stacked the mended nets in the corner, and grabbed her worn woven bag to go to the market. She always went to the market late, when vendors were packing up, to haggle for better prices or to buy leftover vegetables and fish that people were selling cheaply to clear out their stock. Some days, she was lucky enough to find a few wilted bunches of greens to salvage, enough for a meal for her and the kids. Remembering how Tai had been craving braised fish the night before, she scanned the far end of the market. But after walking back and forth several times, all the fish she saw were still fresh and flapping, full of life. She couldn't afford to buy anything like that. Scanning the area once more, she stopped at Mrs. Tam's fish stall, her eyes fixed on a red tilapia gasping in the basin, seemingly on its last legs. At this market, there was an unspoken rule. Live fish had one price, dead fish another. Tom settled down on a nearby post, ostensibly taking a rest, but her eyes were glued to the fish, planning to pounce the moment it floated to the surface and strike a deal. While she waited, she overheard the women in the market excitedly discussing lottery numbers. Suddenly, a clear voice from the vegetable stall across the way called out, Kiet, is that you at the market? Come over here, we're talking about you. Tom looked over to see Mrs. Sao, the vegetable vendor, and a few other women from the village gathered together. She got up and walked over. What's all the commotion about? Mrs. Sao, always quick with words, pulled Tom down onto a small stool and said warmly, We were just talking about you, There's a new Hui, rotating credit association, starting up. We've only got 9 people so far. Why don't you join to make it an even 10? Contribute $1 million each month. When you win, you'll have 10 million in your hands. You can fix up your house and take care of those kids' education. Seeing Tom hesitate, Mrs. Sao pressed further. I'm a trustworthy Hui leader, you know that. I'm only inviting you because we're neighbors. If I made one phone call, someone would jump in immediately, like that Mrs. Tam selling fish over there. She begged to join, but I wouldn't let her. She's so fussy with her money. Tom was tempted, but she still felt uneasy. I'm interested, but my work is so unpredictable. Some months are good, but other months I don't have a spare coin. How would I contribute? Mrs. Sao chuckled, patting Tom's shoulder. Oh, you worry too much. We're all sisters here. If you're short 1 month, we'll all pitch in to help. I only invited you because I feel sorry for your situation. It's a small Hui, nothing big. If you don't have money, no one will bid against you when it's your turn to win. And if you're really desperate, you can pay a premium to get the pot early. Hearing such sweet words, and feeling the other woman's sympathy, Tom readily nodded her head. After asking a few more questions for clarification, she thanked Mrs. Sao profusely and hurried back to Mrs. Tam's fish stall. Just then, Mrs. Tam was scooping the red tilapia, now floating belly up, out of the basin. Tom immediately jumped in. Hey, how much for this fish? 60. Mrs. Tam replied curtly. Oh, come on, it's dead. Give it to me for 30. Sell it quick and go home to make lunch. It's getting late. Are you kidding me, Tom? It just died. It's still fresh. 50 and not a penny less. Tom frowned, turning the fish over in her hands. Please, give me a break. My kids are really craving fish. 40. Please? Mrs. Tam clicked her tongue, but seeing Oot Tom's pleading expression, and with few customers around, she relented. All right, 40 it is. Hurry up and give me the money so I can pack up. Thrilled to have bought the fish at such a good price, Oot Tom happily dropped it into her bag and hurried home, her heart filled with a small joy. From the day she joined Mrs. Sao's hui, Oot Tom felt more motivated, working even harder. Besides mending nets, she took on all sorts of odd jobs in the village. She did anything she could to earn extra money to make her monthly hui payment on time. On those afternoons sitting alone in the lean-to, she would conjure up a vivid, beautiful scenario in her mind. When it was her turn to win the hui, the first thing she would do was fix the leaky thatched roof, so her family wouldn't have to scramble for basins every time it rained. Then she would buy new school clothes for the children, sandals with straps for Teo, and a superhero backpack for Tai. She'd even buy some toothpaste for the house. She'd save whatever was left over for a rainy day, in case someone got sick. But that simple and beautiful vision shattered one sweltering summer afternoon. Oot Tom was diligently mending nets by the river when Mrs. Bai, the dessert vendor, pulled up in her small boat, unusually hurried. Before even tying up the boat, Mrs. Bai called out in a flustered voice, "Oh, Tom, it's terrible. Mrs. Sao has run off with the hui money." Oot Tom's ears began to ring. Her eyes widened, and her hands, which had been moving swiftly, froze, gripping the edge of the bamboo basket tightly. Wordlessly, she jumped into Mrs. Bai's still rocking boat. "Take me to her house quickly, Mrs. Bai." The two women frantically pushed off the shore, sending the boat skimming across the water. When they arrived, Oot Tom was stunned to see a crowd of people gathered in front of Mrs. Sao's thatched house. Everyone's face was contorted with anger, clutching hui ledgers. Some were shouting curses, others whispering in outrage. Some simply covered their faces inside, the sounds of weeping echoing across the canal. But the door of Mrs. Sao's house remained firmly shut, the flimsy bamboo gate secured with a rusty wire. She must have fled in the middle of the night. Her heart pounding, Oot Tom pushed her way through the crowd. An acquaintance grabbed her arm, asking, "Oh God, you're involved too? How much did you lose, Tom?" I lost 2 million. The woman shook her head, offering a bitter consolation. 2 million. Well, consider it a loss to avoid a greater misfortune. I lost nearly 100 million. After losing her 2 million, Oot Tom was despondent, losing sleep and appetite for days. Then, one late night, unable to sleep, she got up and suddenly froze in the doorway of the house. Under the dim light of the oil lamp, she saw her daughter Teo sitting quietly on the bamboo bed. She was secretly taking out a needle and thread, mending a tear in the shoulder of her worn-out school uniform. Oot Tom's throat tightened with emotion. She quickly stepped back into the shadows, behind the door, tears streaming down her face. She felt so useless. She worked tirelessly from morning till night, never resting, but it was barely enough to pay the monthly interest on the family debt. If she managed to save a little extra, it only covered simple meals for her and her children. She had been so consumed by the struggle to survive that she hadn't realized her daughter had been wearing the same torn clothes for so long. Children grow so quickly. It seemed like just yesterday that Teo was wearing short pants. The school pants she was wearing were already cropped to her knees. She felt like the most unsuccessful mother in the world. The only 2 million she had managed to save had been swindled away. But then, looking at the quiet, understanding expression of her 10-year-old daughter, Oot Tom's self-pity gradually transformed into fierce determination. She clenched her fists, vowing to make more money, to provide her children with everything they needed, so they could be like other kids. In the following days, Oot Tom took on grass-cutting jobs in the fields during the day. In the evenings, she hurried to the market town, begging to wash dishes and clean up at a local restaurant. She worked tirelessly until the restaurant closed, returning home late into the night. Tonight was no different. Oot Tom lit the lantern hanging at the bow of her boat, a solitary figure amidst the vast expanse of the river. The journey home was still more than 10 kilometers, and her heart ached with worry. She didn't know if her children had eaten, if they were asleep or still awake. Luckily, she had asked her kind neighbor, Mrs. Hai, to keep an eye on them. As the boat glided past the swampy area near the village, Tom suddenly saw a faint oil lamp flickering from the thicket of reeds growing along the riverbank. Odd, she thought. Many small boats were huddled together in that spot. Curious, she quietly steered her boat closer to investigate. The boats were packed close together, and as they noticed the stranger, several people on the boats turned to look at Tom with cold, impassive faces. She politely nodded in greeting, but a strange feeling crept into her heart. This area was small, and she usually recognized everyone. But these people were completely unfamiliar, total strangers. Tom gently pushed the boat closer, craning her neck to see inside. Suddenly, the strange boats simultaneously parted, creating a path for her boat to enter the center of the group. She could now clearly see an obese old woman sitting cross-legged on the patch of reeds, appearing to be over 70 years old. Her face was unnaturally pale, and her neck and arms were laden with glittering gold jewelry, an indication of extreme wealth. She wore a dark red silk dress, and beside her stood a man in a simple brown ba traditional garment, respectfully holding an oil lamp. The old woman opened her mouth, stained red from chewing betel nut, and spat a wad of red juice into the river, creating a blood-red stain on the dark water. She pointed a finger directly at Tom, asking in a raspy voice, "Where did you come from? Do you want to join my hui or something?" Music. Hearing the hui, Tom immediately remembered being swindled out of her 2 million. She shook her head vigorously, waving her hands frantically. No, I don't play hui." The people around her turned to stare at her, as if she were some strange creature. The old woman seemed angered, slamming her hand on the ground. "If you don't play, why did you bring your boat here? Do you even know who I am?" Tom fearfully shook her head. The old woman said flatly, "I am Bai Kim." Seeing the woman's expression and the increasingly tense faces of the people around her, Tom trembled. Though she didn't understand what she had done wrong, the old woman's anger suddenly dissipated. She returned to her emotionless tone. "Well, you didn't intentionally seek me out. Your boat just drifted here. Seeing me must be fate. Next time, if you want to join my hui, just bring your boat here to this spot and call out my name, Bai Kim, and I will let you join. But now go home. Your children are waiting." Tom, both confused and frightened, hastily nodded her head and pushed her boat out of the strange crowd. As she reached the edge of the group, she glanced back, and goosebumps immediately erupted all over her body. Behind her, where the reeds had been, there was only an expanse of blackness, with no lights and no boats huddled together. Everything had vanished without a trace. Without daring to think further, she bowed her head and desperately rowed towards home, the sound of the oars churning the water echoing in the silent night. The next morning, after sending the children to school, Tom's mind was still racing. She sat down to mend nets by the river, her thoughts in turmoil. As she sat lost in thought, she heard the familiar voice of Mrs. Bai, the dessert vendor. These days, Mrs. Bai had been selling cakes, preserved fruits, fish sauce and various items along the canal. Tom called Mrs. Bai over to buy 2 packets of sticky rice for lunch and a bottle of fish sauce. Mrs. Bai carefully removed her conical hat, then sat next to the dirt bank while fanning herself and immediately starting with the topic of Mrs. Sao. "They said Mrs. Sao has run away to the city with her daughter. Me and some other women are pooling our money and renting a van so we can find her. Will you join?" "Oh, no thanks. I'll stay here since it was only 2 million. Traveling to the city and eating while we stay there will probably cost even more than that amount, and we don't even know if we'll be able to take our money back." "That's right, what you said makes sense. Luckily I still got mine. My other sisters have played 3 or 4 times so they could be the big boss, now they have nothing. That money could reach almost 100 million. The family doesn't know if they could make that amount of money in this lifetime." "Oh, Mrs. Bai, I need to ask, are there any elders in our village named Bai Kim?" Mrs. Bai Kim, "Oh, isn't that woman the biggest hui boss in this country? Her family had a gold shop outside the market. Then Bai waved her hands like she was acting. She was big and fat like this, but she was so rich and her hui was well known. My mom used to only play with her hui. When I was little, all I knew was that Bai was the richest person in this country. Her servants in the house were uncountable. What are you asking about her? She died a long time ago, along with my mom. Bai added. Sh what? You mean she already died? Oh right, she already died a long time ago. But she had a tragic death. It wasn't because she was old or sick. Mrs. Bai looked around before turning back to Tom to whisper. She was killed by robbers who cut her neck when she was carrying gold near Bung Bien. You weren't even here back then that year, so you didn't know that the whole village knows this story. But she was so powerful that no one dared mention her name. Tom felt a chill run down her spine. She hurriedly gathered her nets, intending to rush inside, but Chi Bai, as if drawn by an invisible thread of gossip, stopped her. Ignoring her boat, she hopped ashore and squatted next to Tom, her voice dripping with intrigue. Did you see her, Tom? Why else would you ask? Tom gave a furtive nod. Chi Bai slapped her thigh, her eyes gleaming with excitement. Heavens above! Can it be true? All this time I've only heard whispers. Intrigued by the strange tale, Tom forgot her fear. She urged Chi Bai to tell her everything, eager to satisfy her own curiosity. Chi Bai settled down on the ground, ready to spin her yarn. Back in the day, people said that Bai Kim, consumed by regret over her rotating credit association business when she died, still roams the land, enticing people to join her scheme. Only those with a certain destiny can encounter her. But folks weren't afraid, no. They even longed to meet her, hoping for good fortune. Meeting her is like winning the lottery, Tom. Music. Seeing Tom's wide-eyed wonder, Chi Bai took a deep breath and continued. Her credit association is peculiar. Every month, on payment day, all you need to do is burn some hell money for her. But when it's your turn to collect, you'll receive gold, real gold, 100%. That's what the old folks told me, anyway. Whether it's true or not, I can't say for sure. Tom's heart pounded in her chest. She grabbed Chi Bai's thin arm, her voice trembling as she asked, Is it really true, Chi? Real gold, 100%? Of course, it's true. Did she invite you to join last night? Yes, she did. But I was too scared, so I refused. Chi Bai clicked her tongue in regret. Even as she rode off to continue her sales, she kept clicking her tongue, turning back to say one last thing to Tom before disappearing around the bend. Other people would give anything for a chance like that, a shot at winning the lottery, and you just threw it away, Tom. Oh, Tom. After seeing Chi Bai off, Tom remained seated, lost in thought beside her ramshackle house. Chi Bai's words echoed in her ears. She thought of the debt that had weighed on her family for years, of the bleak future facing her and her children. A surge of recklessness stirred within the desperate mother. Her eyes gazed out at the distant marshland, the place where she had met the woman in red the previous night. Tom decided she had to find a way out of this dire situation, even if it meant making a deal with the devil. Music. That afternoon, Tom skipped her extra shift in town. She rushed to pick up her 2 children from school, preparing dinner, bathing them, and ensuring they completed their homework. She tucked them both into their room, gently fanning them with a palm leaf fan. She fanned her son, Teo, and her daughter, T, until they drifted off to sleep. Only when the moon hung high overhead, and the children's breathing turned even, did she tiptoe out, grabbing a lantern as she ventured towards the riverbank. Tom carefully climbed into her boat, quietly rowing towards the marshland. In just over 10 minutes, the dark marsh came into view. Under the dim moonlight, the place seemed even more eerie than the night before. She steered her boat to the same reeds as before, but the surroundings were eerily deserted and silent, devoid of any other boats. Tom took a deep breath, gripped the side of the boat, and clambered ashore. Her feet sank into the muddy water. She glanced around at the thickets, and called out hesitantly, Bai Kim? Are you there? Instantly, a blue flame flared up beside her, illuminating a section of the marsh grass. A rustling sound arose, and a figure emerged from the reeds. Bob Ikem. A stern-faced man followed her, acting as an attendant. Bob Ikem, a stout woman, stepped out of the bushes, opened her red mouth, and spat a mouthful of blood-red liquid onto the ground. Last night, from a distance, Tom had assumed her red lips were from chewing beetle nut, but tonight, up close, the stench of blood assaulted her senses. It was no beetle nut. Seeing the catfish head, still dripping with blood, that Bob Ikem held in her hand, Tom realized with horror that the woman ate raw fish. Yesterday, Bob I said if I wanted to join the credit association, I should come here, so I've come to ask for your permission to join. Ikem nodded. The man beside her handed her a soft, leather-bound book. She opened it and pointed directly at Tom's face. Each month, you must offer me a live chicken and fresh fish, the kind that still flops around in the bucket. Remember to burn plenty of spirit money. Do as I say for 7 months, and on the 7th month, I will let you collect the big payout. With that, she raised the catfish head to her mouth, crunching down on the remaining bones. Under the eerie blue light, her eyes gleamed as she stared intently at Tom. Yes, Bob I. How many people are in the association? Just you and me. The rules are mine to make. Starts this month. Offer it to me tomorrow night, at 10 p.m. by the water's edge. But, Ikem paused, licking her crimson lips. Tomorrow bring me some tadpoles. I'm craving them. They're too fast for me to catch. Tom could only nod repeatedly. Bob Ikem and the man disappeared into the reeds, vanishing with the blue flame. Standing alone in the deserted place, her body still trembled with fear. She didn't know if she would actually receive the payout, or if this was a trap even more terrifying than Sao's scam. One thing was clear to Tom. There was no turning back now. The next morning, Chief Alu went to the market before dawn. To buy the fresh tadpoles as Bob Ikem requested, she had to go early. She already had several young hens at home, so she didn't need to buy more. Kiet's reputation had spread far and wide in the market, so when they saw her approach the fish stall, asking for an entire string of tadpoles still wriggling, Batam was surprised and asked repeatedly, "Are you really buying these, Tom? Once you buy them, there's no returning them, you hear? Don't haggle with me this early in the morning." Tom nodded, asking Batam to keep the whole string together. She would take care of preparing them herself. The string of tadpoles, though they looked small, weighed over a kilogram, cost her 60,000 BAC. As she handed over the money to Batam, her heart ached as if someone had cut a piece out of her. She stopped by the paper goods stall to buy joss paper, incense, and candles, feeling that she had prepared adequately for the first offering that night. Around 9 p.m., the two children started to doze off, falling into a deep sleep. Tom stealthily went behind the pen to catch the largest young hen, tying its feet tightly together. She carried the offering tray to her usual spot by the water, placing the hen, securely bound on the tray, next to the bucket containing the squirming tadpoles. She sat watching the clock until exactly 10 p.m. Tom lit 3 incense sticks, murmuring Bob Ikem's name, then lit the joss paper. The flames blazed fiercely in the night. The smoke rose, mingling with the cold night air. After the offering, she glanced around, then did as she was instructed, leaving the offering tray there and going back into the house, feeling she had completed her duty. Lying in bed, Tom tossed and turned, her eyes wide open, staring up at the thatched roof. Somewhere past midnight, she suddenly jumped when she heard a noise from outside, a loud, mournful squawking of a chicken. Next came the sound of tadpoles writhing frantically in the bucket, hitting the plastic with a slapping sound. Tom felt a chill run down her spine, and she turned over, covering her face with her hands. She pressed the pillow tightly over her ears, trying to block out the terrifying sounds. Tonight, by the river behind her house, a feast not meant for the living was taking place. Music. Tom stayed awake all night, her ears straining, listening to every sound. As soon as dawn broke, she threw off her blanket and ran straight outside. Before her lay a scene of chaos. The chicken had vanished, leaving only white feathers scattered everywhere. In the empty bucket, a few tadpole guts remained, slimy and foul-smelling. Tom looked around to make sure no one was watching, then quickly cleaned up all the traces. It was done. The first month. Despite her poverty and hardship, she managed to provide the necessary offerings in the following months, never daring to miss a single time. The chickens behind the house gradually disappeared. Teo and T kept asking why their hens laid fewer eggs. Finally, the long-awaited day arrived. She had made offerings for 7 months. That night, following her routine, Tom went to bed. She anticipated the familiar sounds of Ba by Kim arriving to partake in the offering. But strangely, she lay there until well past midnight, and everything remained quiet. Her heart burned with anxiety. She feared something had gone wrong with this final offering, so she cautiously peeked outside to investigate. The house was dark, eerily silent. Tom fumbled through the darkness, intending to find the oil lamp in the main house. She took a few steps to open the doorway between the back and front of the house. She froze when she saw a large figure standing in the middle of her house. In the dim moonlight filtering through the cracks in the wall, gold and silver glittered, nearly blinding her. It was Ba Bai Kim. She had entered Tom's house. Bai Kim stood there, her mouth still chewing on something bloody. Seeing Tom, she chuckled hoarsely. Her deep voice echoed in the silent night. "Smells good. You have children here?" The question was like a bucket of ice water thrown over Tom. She went numb, clutching the doorframe, barely able to speak. "Yes, Ba Bai. The children are mine." Bai Kim sniffed the air in a chilling manner, then grinned, revealing her gruesome mouth and continued. "You've completed the 7 offerings. Tomorrow night, go to the marsh to collect your payout, you hear?" With that, Bai Kim's stout figure turned into a dark, ominous gust of wind, vanishing before Tom's eyes. She could no longer stand, and slid down the wall, collapsing on the damp ground. For a moment, Tom feared that the woman would jump into the room and devour her children, as the look in her eyes when she asked about the children revealed a terrifying craving. Despite her fear, Tom knew she had to go to the marsh the next night. She had been waiting for this day for 7 long months, pouring so much of her money and effort into it. Her backyard was depleted of chickens, with only a few young hens remaining. Thinking it over, she realized the situation seemed less like a credit union and more like she was trying to appease a demon with flesh and blood, waiting for the monster to bestow upon her some kind of favor. After the children fell asleep, Tom rode out to the marsh. The eerie scene from their first meeting reappeared. The lamps shone brightly amid the thick water plants, with the small boats of strange, wandering souls gathered in abundance. This time, Tom was braver. She no longer hesitated on the fringes but pulled her boat straight to the center. Ba Bai Kim sat high on her throne made of woven grass. Upon seeing Tom, she waved her hand, dispersing the crowd. Tom knew the people surrounding her were only wandering souls, so she avoided looking at them, focusing only on the idea of getting the money and running away as fast as possible. Bai Kim extended her fat, bejeweled hand and pointed directly down into the black water. "Can you dive? The gold is down there. However much you get, that's yours. But if you don't get anything and drown, don't blame me." With that, Bai Kim and the other souls vanished into the darkness. In the blink of an eye, the lights vanished, leaving Tom in a deserted space, with only the faint moonlight reflecting on the water. Without any hesitation, Tom jumped into the water. The chill that enveloped her skin couldn't extinguish the burning determination in her heart. Now that she had gotten this far, she had to see it through. She took a deep breath and dove down. Underwater, it was pitch black. She could only grope around with her hands in the soft mud at the bottom of the shallow river. Tom's fingers brushed countless roots and rocks, but she persisted. Suddenly, her fingers touched a cold, hard object shaped like a ring. It was a gold bracelet. She clutched it in her hand and continued to search. Another ring, a necklace. She stuffed everything quickly into her baba's pocket. Just as she was about to surface for air, a bony hand emerged from the mud and tightly grabbed her ankle. Tom panicked, struggling wildly. Her lungs felt like they would burst, and she began to swallow the foul-tasting water. In desperation, she grabbed the hard gold bracelet in her hand and struck the bony hand. After a crack, the bony fingers broke off. She kicked hard, shooting to the surface like an arrow. Uttam gasped for air, coughing violently. She scrambled to her boat, using every ounce of strength to pull herself aboard. Her body was shaking with cold and fear. She opened her pocket and dumped out the gold she had found. Under the moonlight, it glittered with an eerie light. Although it still smelled of mud and death, she had received the payout, earned with her life. Carrying the gold redolent with the smell of mud and death, Uttam rode straight to the town market the next day. She chose a large jewelry store and sold everything, receiving a huge sum of money, more than she had ever dreamed of. Uttam thought it was all a dream, and that when she awoke, everything would return to normal. She would still be a single mother, burdened by a massive debt, unsure when she would ever pay it off. When she was able to think straight again, the first thing Uttam did was go to her lender and pay off the debt her late husband had left behind. Holding the torn-up debt note in her hand, she felt as if a heavy stone that had weighed on her shoulders for years had been lifted. With the remaining money, she hired workers to replace her dilapidated thatched roof with sturdy corrugated iron. The neighbors were surprised to see Uttam suddenly have money to renovate her home. Several women came by to inquire, hinting that they were curious about where the money came from and why she was spending so much. Uttam could only force a smile, vaguely saying she had borrowed from relatives on her mother's side. Tai was the happiest. His mother had bought him a new superhero backpack, just like he had always dreamed. He proudly wore the backpack everywhere, running around the neighborhood to show it off to his friends. He refused to take it off when eating or sleeping. Teo was different. She tried on the new white blouse and sandals her mother bought her once, and then carefully locked them away in the wardrobe. She was afraid to wear them, afraid of getting them dirty or ruined. In the heart of a child who had experienced hardship, she feared that it would be a long, long time before she would get another new thing, so she couldn't bear to use them. Uttam felt both love and sadness. She was content. Having experienced a terrifying transaction with the other world, she never dared to imagine a second one. This money was the price of her utmost fear. She would use it to provide her children with a stable life, and then she would work hard with her own hands. But peace didn't last long. Recently, the rainy season had begun, with torrential rain falling day and night. The water rose, flooding the courtyard. Uttam could only stay home and mend her nets, unable to earn any extra money. At the same time, both children fell ill. Tai only had a stuffy nose and a few coughs, but Teo seemed to be much more sick. She had a high fever and a persistent cough. Uttam took her daughter to the clinic, where they gave her a shot and some medicine, then sent her home. But the child's condition didn't improve. Seeing Teo growing paler, the people at the clinic advised Uttam to take her daughter to a hospital for further evaluation. Uttam intended to do so, but Teo refused. As soon as they arrived home, she hugged the pillar, crying uncontrollably. "I don't want to go. I want to stay home with T. It's too far away, it costs too much money. Ma. I'm getting better, Ma." Uttam's heart ached. She held her daughter in her arms and comforted her. "Teo, be good. We have money now, you don't have to worry. You have to go so you can get better." She had to repeat this several times before the child sniffled and agreed to go to the provincial hospital with her in the morning. That night, Uttam stayed up until nearly midnight, packing clothes and preparing for a stay at the hospital. Exhaustion set in, and as soon as she lay down, she fell into a deep sleep. And then she dreamed of someone she never expected. It was her husband. He appeared, but not with the gentle, loving look she remembered. His face was filled with anger and grief. He pointed at Uttam, his voice harsh. "You've doomed our child. Dealing with demons isn't as simple as you think. No demon keeps its promises. You've spent its money. Now it will come to take what it wants. It wants Teo, it wants our child. Run, my love. Run." His last scream jolted Uttam awake, sweat pouring down her face. She turned to see Teo sleeping beside her, but her face was covered in sweat, her fever so high she was delirious. Suddenly, a terrible wheezing sound came from the wall. Uttam held her breath and looked over. It was Bai Kim. She was pressing her pale, bloated face against the old screen. A long, red tongue slithered through the crack in the screen, slowly reaching forward, gently licking Teo's hot forehead. So good. Music. The utter terror transformed into a mother's power. Uttam pulled her daughter close. She turned to face the screen, her voice trembling with rage. Bai Kim, our deal is over. I quit the association. I'm not playing anymore. Don't come to my house again. Who said it's over? You spent my gold, now you have to play until. Not until I'm out of gold will I yield. I still have plenty under my floorboards. Her savage laughter echoed through the flimsy house. Bai Kim eyed the tiny, unconscious girl, licking her bloodied lips before vanishing into the darkness, leaving behind a chilling promise. I'll be back with my crew tomorrow. This time, I expect your daughter as an offering. Understand? Uttam clutched her two feverish children tightly, tears streaming down her face. Little Tai stirred, his eyes still heavy with sleep. Mom, is Dad back? I thought I saw him outside by the back of the house calling my name to wake you up, but I was so sleepy I couldn't. Uttam's throat tightened with a bitter taste as she listened to her son. She knew her husband's spirit had returned to warn them. Wiping away her tears, she gently soothed her youngest child. Then, she led Tai to the front of the house, lit an incense stick, and placed it on her husband's altar, her hand trembling slightly. My love, if your spirit is here, protect your wife and children from this disaster. Please heal Tai and Teo. Hear me? I was wrong. I'll find a way to stop her. Whether her prayer was heard or her husband's spirit was watching over his children. The next morning, both children's fevers broke. They were still sniffly but much more alert. Yet, Uttam's worries were only slightly eased. She feared that Bai Kim would indeed come for Teo that night. Music. Uttam stayed home all day, preparing to defend her family. She borrowed an old carrying pole from a neighbor and laid it across the front door. The elders said this would block the path of evil spirits. She then strung garlic bulbs together and hung them in front of the main door and the back kitchen door. Afterward, she rushed to the kitchen, crushed ginger, chili, and pepper, and mixed them with white wine. She heated the mixture on a charcoal stove, filling the house with thick, pungent fumes. The sharp smell made Tai and Teo cough uncontrollably, forcing them to run outside. She coaxed them back inside and boiled a large pot of grapefruit and mulberry leaves, making them bathe to cleanse themselves. As dusk fell, fear began to creep into every corner of the house. Uttam lit the oil lamp, carefully adjusting the wick. She prepared a small offering before her husband's altar, once again begging him to protect her and the children. Finally, she hid the long cleaver she used for chopping firewood under the mat by her pillow, coaxing her children to sleep, but her own eyes darted back and forth, her hand gripping the cleaver, staring intensely into the darkness outside the window, waiting for the evil that was coming. Uttam kept glancing at the clock while continuously tending to the incense on her husband's altar. The incense had to burn constantly. She prayed in her heart, alternately calling upon her husband's spirit and begging the gods for protection. Time passed heavily, her mind becoming hazy with exhaustion. Suddenly, she heard a familiar voice outside the front door. Tom, it's Bai, the sweet soup vendor. I came to see if the little ones are feeling better. Hearing Bai's voice, Uttam felt a slight relief, but her hand remained firmly on the cleaver. She hurried to the front of the house, and was about to open the door when she abruptly stopped. A chill ran down her spine. She glanced at the wall clock, the hands were overlapping, pointing directly at midnight. Who would visit children at this hour? Fear gripped her again. She cautiously approached the wall, creating a small hole to peer through. It wasn't Bai, the sweet soup vendor, standing in front of her house, but Bai Kim with her emotionless servant. The eerie green light in the servant's hand illuminated Bai Kim's pale, plump face and the glittering gold and silver adorning her body. Uttam tightened her grip on the cleaver until her knuckles turned white, holding her breath, trying not to make a sound. Yet, From the crimson mouth of the demon, the sweet voice of Bai, the soup vendor, rang out. Tom, I brought some green bean sweet soup for you and the kids. Open the door for me, dear. Tom quickly covered her mouth with both hands, retreating back towards her husband's altar, trying to calm herself. But outside, Bai Kim was growing impatient. The sweet voice vanished, replaced by a menacing threat. Tom, if you don't open up, I'll tear the walls down and crawl inside. Tom was so terrified that her legs felt like giving way. Just then, a calm, warm, and familiar voice of her late husband echoed in her ear. Don't be afraid, she can't get in. What you've done has blocked her. Don't let her trick you. Reassured by her husband's words, Tom calmed down a little. But then, a faint creaking sound came from the back of the house. A development neither she nor her husband's spirit had anticipated. Little Tai had woken up and opened the back door to relieve himself. Immediately, a foul, rancid gust of wind swept through the house through the open door. Seizing the golden opportunity, Bai Kim let out a savage shriek and lunged inside. The ghost ignored Tom, diving straight for the bed, grabbing Teo's leg, pulling her out. Tom could only let out a scream before a white shadow darted from the altar, attempting to save the child. But Bai Kim's servant appeared, blocking the white shadow. In that brief moment, Teo was dragged out of the house and into the water. By the riverbank, several ghostly boats were already waiting. Bai Kim scooped Teo up and jumped onto one of the boats. Then the ghostly fleet retreated towards the distant swamp. Seeing her daughter snatched away before her eyes, Tom did not hesitate. She rushed Tai back inside, told him to hide, and locked the door. Grabbing her long cleaver and the string of garlic, she leaped into her boat, gripping the paddle tightly, her eyes blazing as she looked into the darkness and yelled, "You hag! Give my daughter back!" Her calloused hands expertly paddled, the boat cutting through the water reeds. But how could human strength compare to that of a ghost? Soon, Bai Kim's fleet was taking her child further and further away. The distance between her and Teo grew longer and longer amidst the whistling wind, which sounded like Teo's voice crying out, "Mommy!" Just as Tom was about to give up hope, her boat suddenly surged forward, speeding through the night without her paddling. Startled, she turned back to see a shadowy figure sitting at the stern, also holding a paddle, helping her row. It was her husband. Tears welled up in Tom's eyes. Her husband had died when Tai was just learning to walk. For so many years, she had single-handedly carried the family, always having to appear strong, never daring to complain. Yet now, seeing the figure of the man who had once been the pillar of her family, she felt incredibly weak, because she knew she still had support. The night wind whipped across her face. Tom heard her husband's deep voice, full of remorse, behind her. "Tom, I'm so sorry. I should have come to warn you and the kids sooner. It's because I was greedy for the money, wanting you to have the gold to provide for our life, that I just stood by and watched you make a deal with the devil. Who would have thought Bai Kim would be so cruel? I was useless even in death, leaving debts for my wife and children to bear. I'm so sorry to you and the kids." Tom didn't turn back, still facing away from her husband as she rowed, tears streaming down her face. There were many nights she lay awake, blaming him for leaving too soon, abandoning her and her children. But now, hearing these words, she couldn't bring herself to be angry with him anymore. "I don't blame you. Bai Kim's actions are partly because of my own greed. Now, saving Teo is the most important thing. Head the boat toward the swamp. I think she will take our daughter back to her lair." Her husband's shadow nodded. "I'll put my strength into pushing the paddle." The boat shot forward like a motorized vessel. Before long, the familiar green lights came into view. Bai Kim's fleet was anchored in the gloomy swamp. Tom and her husband exchanged glances. He quietly slipped into the cold water, stealthily swimming toward the lights to scout the situation. Tom stayed on the boat, clutching the cleaver, holding her breath, watching her husband's shadowy figure weaving through the water. His shadow reached the grass. She didn't hesitate any longer. Taking the cleaver, she vigorously chopped each garlic bulb, smearing the pungent odor onto the blade, then quietly paddled closer to the shore, approaching from a distance. She decided to go around on land to approach Baikim's lair. Over the past few months, she had inquired and learned more about the tragedy that had befallen Mrs. Tam years ago. More than 10 people on the boat carrying gold had their throats slit in the middle of the river. Tam guessed that the servants surrounding her were all the restless spirits of that massacre. Although she knew Baikim was also pitiful, but when it came to her daughter, she wouldn't show any mercy. Even if it meant death, she would save her child. Tam waded through the waterlogged reeds. The closer she got to the green lights, the faster her heart pounded. She nestled into a thick bush, lying flat in the muddy water to observe. Teo was lying sprawled at Baikim's feet, unconscious. The surrounding spirits stared blankly at the child, their eyes full of longing. Just as Baikim's bejeweled hand reached out to touch Teo's face, Tam charged out, wielding the cleaver. "You old hag, don't you dare touch my daughter." She lunged forward like a wild tiger, the cleaver flashing in the night. The garlic-infused blade grazed Baikim, tearing open her ghostly skin, a foul-smelling black vapor rising from the cut, causing her to howl. Having her throat slit by a cleaver during her life, the cleaver remained Baitam's greatest fear, even in death. Seeing their mistress injured, the servants fearfully retreated. Tam swung the cleaver in the air, shouting to drive the ghosts away, then quickly bent down to pull the unconscious Teo into her arms. Baikim furiously shook her bracelets, their tinkling sound cutting through the night. "That little one is destined to be with me. If she follows me, you'll have gold and silver to spend for the rest of your life." Then, gold and silver poured from her, forming a glittering pile in front of Tam, enough to make any greedy person lose their mind. But Tam only shook her head, clutching her daughter tighter. "There's nothing more valuable than my daughter. Even if you give me a mountain of gold, I'll still take my daughter home today." Then, she retreated toward the water's edge. Just then, her husband steered the boat into view. He reached out to take them both. Seeing her prey about to escape, Baikim was unwilling to give up. She waved her hand, and the spirits immediately swarmed forward, trying to grab Tam's boat. But Tam slashed at them with the cleaver, scaring them away. With her husband's help, the boat sped through the water. Behind them, Baikim let out a savage shriek and jumped into the river. An enormous white shadow swam after them with incredible speed, getting closer and closer to the boat. Tam's husband yelled, "Give me the cleaver!" She quickly handed it to him. He grabbed the cleaver, then unexpectedly let go of the boat. "You paddle, take the children, and go. I'll stay behind to stop her." "No, my love. You died once already. Don't be afraid of dying again. Just take care of our children. Live well, understand?" With those words, he turned and charged straight at Baikim's approaching white shadow, cleaver in hand. Tam paddled frantically, tears blurring her vision. She could only see her husband gripping Baikim tightly, the garlic-infused blade slicing sharply across her throat. The demon's head was severed, he had won. But immediately, Baikim's servant spirits swarmed him, engulfing his white shadow. The eerie lights around them went out, and the river became dark and eerily silent. Tam's hands were numb from paddling. She knew her husband had died again. A final death. Now, he could no longer return home to rest at the altar, enjoying a bit of incense from his wife and children. Music. The next morning, Teo woke up, the fever completely gone. She was healthy as if nothing had happened. She remembered nothing of the terrifying night. The lives of the three of them returned to normal, poor but peaceful. The money from Baikim, after paying off debts and repairing the house, was not much. Tam used it all to buy rice to share with the neighbors in her husband's name, hoping to gain some merit for him. Afterward, Tam continued her work of mending nets, cutting grass, and working as a hired hand to raise her children. Years later, Tai and Teo had both grown up. One afternoon, as Tam sat mending nets in front of her house, she looked out at the canal. A gentle breeze suddenly blew through, stirring the incense sticks she had just lit on her husband's altar. The incense smoke didn't rise into the sky but circled around her and her children like a warm embrace. Utam smiled peacefully. She knew that wherever he was still watching over and protecting her and their children. Music. Dear listeners, you have just finished listening to the short story, Playing Hui with a Ghost, a new creation by Kyo Trin. Goodbye and see you in the next works. Wishing you a good night's rest. Music.